Welcome aboard Train Z1X. All passengers are expected to comply with the following regulations. Rule 1. This is an express train and will not stop at any station en route. No matter what happens, do not get off the train. Seriously, do not get off the train. Rule 2. This is a non-smoking train. If you encounter a passenger who is smoking, leave the area immediately and report them to a train attendant. Rule 3. For your own safety, please find the seat and car assigned to you on your ticket. You are strictly forbidden from changing seats without permission from other passengers and a train attendant. Rule 4. In case of any emergency, please proceed to the nearest restroom and use the radio to call for a train attendant. Note, if the indicator light in the restroom changes from green to flashing red, please leave immediately. Rule 5. All official train attendants wear dark blue uniforms. If you encounter an attendant wearing any other color, do not speak to them or make any physical contact. Leave the area immediately. Seriously, do not speak to them or make any physical contact. Friendly reminder, a snack cart is available on this train. Please feel free to make a purchase if you need anything. Finally, we sincerely wish you a pleasant journey. Standing on the platform, I stared down at the text message I just received, completely baffled. Probably just spam. Ignore it. My friend Rachel, who was traveling with me, put her phone away and pulled her down jacket tighter, her breath turning to a white puff in the air. God, this weather is awful. It's freezing. It was late January, right after winter break started. The train we were waiting for was scheduled to arrive at 11:30 p.m. The platform was nearly empty, and a cold wind snaked its way down my collar, making me want to curl into a ball. Both Rachel and I were from small towns out of state. They were far away and didn't have airports, so this direct train was our only option. The trip would take 3 days and 2 nights. Because of that, Rachel and I always traveled together for school breaks, just to have someone to watch our backs. Is this train going to be late? I'm about to freeze to death, Rachel complained. Just as she finished, a halo of light appeared in the darkness ahead. Then, a dark green train slowly pulled into the station. That's when I noticed that, at some point, a thick fog had rolled in around us. The white mist spread out, so dense it felt like you could scoop it up. The cold, clammy air stuck to my skin, and I couldn't help but shiver. After the train came to a stop, I took a look at the nearby cars. Not a single passenger got off at this station. Only a few scattered people were boarding. The fog obscured everything further down the platform. A conductor in a dark blue uniform stood at the car entrance, checking tickets and directing passengers. He wore a wide-brimmed cap and kept his head down. His face was deathly pale, his expression stiff. Thinking about the text I just received, I felt a strange, indescribable unease. But Rachel had already grabbed her luggage and stepped onto the train. I had to hurry to catch up, telling myself I was just overthinking things. Inside the car, the blasting heat was a huge relief. The lights in the aisle were already off, leaving only the dim glow from lamps under the small tables. Rachel and I used our phone flashlights to find our compartment, numbers 06 and 07. We slid the door open to find it pitch black, except for the sound of a fat man snoring, which rumbled like thunder. Using the faint light from the hallway, I could just make out a large man lying on the bottom bunk of berth, but that bottom bunk was supposed to be mine. There were no other passengers in the compartment. I remembered the third rule from the text and mustered the courage to wake the man up. "Excuse me, sir, this is my seat. Car 5, berth 06, lower bunk. Are you sure you're in the right place?" The man, reeking of alcohol, waved his hand impatiently and mumbled, "I'm the top bunk. Let's switch." He rolled over, ignoring me, and his snores quickly started up again. I was at a loss. Rachel's bunk was right next to mine. She put her luggage away, then pulled me out of the compartment, annoyed. "Come on, let's find an attendant." As soon as we stepped out, we saw an attendant standing at the connecting passage at the end of the aisle. His back was to us, his upper body hidden in the shadows. The light from the floor barely outlined his lower half. Rachel walked quickly toward him. I tried to grab her, but I was too slow. "Excuse me, there's someone in the lower bunk of 06 who insists on switching." Before Rachel could finish, I yanked her by the wrist and pulled her back. "What's wrong?" Rachel asked, looking very confused. I didn't know how to explain. All I could say was, "That's not an attendant." "Huh? What do you mean?" "He's wearing a uniform, isn't he?" But his uniform wasn't dark blue. It was black. I kept that to myself. I glanced back and saw the attendant was still standing there. His back was to us, but I had the chilling feeling that he was staring right at us. I didn't dare think about it anymore. I turned back around, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. I wondered if Rachel talking to him counted as breaking the rules. And if it did, what would happen? Lost in my thoughts, we returned to our compartment. We slid the door open and froze. The lower bunk of 06 was empty. The fat man who had been lying there just a minute ago was gone. What's going on? Rachel was just as confused as I was. I turned on my phone's flashlight. All 6 bunks were empty. The fat man was really gone. Rachel shrugged. Maybe one of the other attendants kicked him out. The bunk the man had been on was now perfectly neat, as if someone had tidied it. The sheet was almost wrinkle-free, and the blanket was folded neatly on the pillow. I couldn't help but wonder. Could someone really do that in such a short amount of time? Only a faint, lingering smell of alcohol in the compartment proved the fat man had ever been there at all. Rachel, however, didn't seem to care. She flopped onto her bed and started playing on her phone. The car began to sway gently. I lifted the curtain to look outside, but everything was still shrouded in thick fog. The train was slowly pulling away from the station and picking up speed. Rachel fiddled with her phone and suddenly complained, "Ugh, the signal in here sucks. I can't even send a text." My heart sank. I pulled out my own phone. Sure enough, there wasn't a single bar of service. Even emergency calls wouldn't go through. I felt more and more certain that something was wrong with this train. Rachel had already put her phone down and was getting ready for bed. Soon, the sound of her steady breathing filled the small compartment. I tried to calm myself down, crawled into my bunk, and closed my eyes, trying to sleep. As my tense muscles relaxed, a wave of exhaustion washed over me, pulling my consciousness into the abyss. "Cindy! Cindy! Wake up!" I don't know how long I'd been asleep, but I heard someone calling my name. I groggily opened my eyes. The compartment was still pitch black. A blurry face suddenly appeared right in front of mine. She was craning her neck, her face a mask of terror, her hands shaking me violently. I jumped, suddenly wide awake, and realized it was Rachel. Seeing my eyes open, Rachel stammered, "Cindy, did you hear that voice?" "Voice? What voice?" "A voice, people talking, so many people, they're all around me." Rachel's eyes were wide with terror. She clutched her head, looking like she was on the verge of a breakdown. I hadn't heard any voices. Besides, there was no one else in the compartment but us. But looking at Rachel, it didn't seem like she was playing a prank. "Rachel, were you having a nightmare?" I tentatively reached out, trying to calm her down. "Don't touch me." She recoiled as if shocked, screaming hysterically. "Don't you touch me." Before I could react, Rachel yanked the compartment door open and ran out in a panic. My first instinct was to go after her, but as I started to get up, I froze. The memory of the attendant we'd seen in the hallway gave me a strange, creeping sense of dread. I forced myself to sit back down on the bed and check the time on my phone, 1:30 a.m. I'd only been asleep for a little over an hour. What should I do now? Should I go look for Rachel? But I had a feeling that staying in the compartment was the safer option. Then again, if I just left her, what if something happened to her? My mind was a total mess. I couldn't think straight. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Rachel. I answered immediately. The connection was terrible. All I could hear was a choppy voice mixed with static. "Run, they're calm." "Rachel, what? Where are you? I can't hear you." "Run, ah." A blood-curdling scream, and then Rachel's voice cut out. The call ended. I tried to call back, but my phone still had no signal. The compartment was silent again. I sat on my bed, clutching my phone, my entire body stiff. Who was they that Rachel mentioned on the phone? And what did she mean by run? Was she telling me to get out of the compartment? Before I could sort any of this out, I heard a drip, drip, drip sound in the compartment. It sounded like water dripping from the ceiling. My heart began to pound. Then, a splat. A dark shape flashed before my eyes. Something had fallen and landed in front of me. I moved my phone, casting its pale light on the object. It was a fat torso, lying on the floor. It had no arms or legs. Its head was twisted around. Its eye sockets were deep and empty, its mouth hung wide open, and its features were contorted into an expression of a terror I had never seen before. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. It felt like something was blocking my throat. Even though I'd only seen him once, I recognized that face. It was the fat man who had been lying in my bunk and then disappeared. When the fat man slowly began to sit up, I finally heard my own scream. I stumbled out of the compartment, my mind blank, and ran down the aisle. When I reached the connecting passage between the cars, I was hit by the strong smell of cigarette smoke. I stopped, gasping for breath, my mouth dry. The pounding of my heart drowned out everything else. Gray smoke was billowing out from behind the connecting door. Almost at the same time, an oval-shaped head slowly peeked out from behind the partition. The most horrifying part was its face, which was covered in a dense cluster of mouths. Each one was puffing out a ring of smoke. In the middle of all those mouths was a single eye. Its long, vertical pupils stared at me, blinking over and over. Panic shot through my nervous system, making my skin crawl. The monster seemed to notice me and slowly revealed its entire body. It was just a bald torso, swollen like a tumor, so large it almost blocked the entire passageway. Countless arms sprouted from around the tumor, each one holding a cigarette, periodically stuffing one into a mouth. It was like a chimney, continuously spewing out choking smoke. I felt like I'd been plunged into an ice cave, frozen to the spot. It wasn't until the creature started using its arms to drag its tumorous body towards me that I snapped out of it. I remembered the text message and quickly ducked into the restroom diagonally across from me, locking the door behind me. A creaking, squeezing sound came from outside. It sounded like some kind of creature was pressing against the door, trying to force its way in. The restroom was tiny, just barely big enough to turn around in. Above the doorframe, a green indicator light was on. Next to the toilet, a radio handset was mounted on the wall. Without a second thought, I grabbed the handset and put it to my ear. The radio seemed to have only one line. It rang twice, and then a raspy voice answered. "Hello, how can I help you?" I forced myself to stay calm and organize my thoughts. In the passage between cars 5 and 6, I didn't know how to describe the tumor creature. I just said, "There's something smoking." "Understood. We'll send an attendant to deal with it immediately. Please remain in the restroom for now. Do not come out." After the call ended, I huddled in the restroom, trembling. The mirror over the sink reflected my face. All the color had drained from it, leaving a lifeless, ghostly white. My hands shaking, I slapped myself hard across the face. It hurt. A lot. So, I wasn't dreaming. This was all really happening. But how was that possible? How could a monster like that exist in the real world? As my mind raced, I noticed the indicator light above the door. It had suddenly changed from solid green to flashing red. I froze for a second, then remembered the rules from the text message. A wave of dread washed over me. I remembered it very clearly. The message said that when the indicator light in the restroom changes from green to flashing red, please leave immediately. A feeling of unease spread through me. I felt like I'd been thrown naked into a snowstorm. My body began to tremble uncontrollably. That monster was outside the door. But if I stayed in the restroom, would I be breaking the rules? The image of Rachel's terrified face flashed in my mind, making the feeling of dread even stronger. What was I supposed to do? While I was torn, the indicator light suddenly went out. The restroom door slid open. A conductor in a dark blue uniform was standing in the doorway. He was unusually tall, at least 6.5 feet, and wore a wide-brimmed cap. His face was as stiff as marble. He looked down at me, his gaze intense, and said in a low, raspy voice, "Hello. The smoking passenger has been taken to the security office for a reprimand. You can come out now." I cautiously stepped out of the restroom. Just as the attendant had said, the hallway outside was empty. The monster was gone. I finally let out a small sigh of relief, my tense nerves relaxing. We apologize for the unpleasant experience. We will strengthen our patrols. But what's going on? What was that thing? And that text I got before I boarded, what do all those rules mean? Now that I'd calmed down, I peppered the attendant with questions, letting out all my pent-up confusion. But the attendant just stared at me coldly and replied flatly, "For your own safety, please comply with the passenger regulations." With that, he started to turn away. Then I remembered the fat man in my compartment. I quickly stopped the attendant and told him what had happened in there. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." The attendant turned on a flashlight. On the hallway carpet, a dark trail snaked its way toward the connecting passage at the other end of the car. The fat man was gone again, leaving only a pool of dark red blood in the compartment. A sticky substance was constantly dripping from the ceiling, accompanied by a foul smell. "We're very sorry, but your bunk has been contaminated and is temporarily unusable. Please wait a moment while we clean it up for you." Contaminated? My heart skipped a beat. I forced myself to ask, "Can you move me to another bunk?" The attendant replied coldly, "I'm sorry, but all bunks on the train are currently full. Please wait patiently." I was about to ask how long I'd have to wait when the attendant added, "Also, for your own safety, please try to stay where you are. Do not wander into other cars." Then he ignored me, pulled out a key, locked the compartment door, and followed the trail on the carpet toward the connecting passage. I was left all alone in the dim, silent hallway. I sat by myself on a small folding chair in the aisle. My phone still had no signal. Rachel was still nowhere to be found. The car was dimly lit and dead silent. I remembered the attendant saying all the bunks were full, but I didn't quite believe him. There weren't that many passengers on the platform when I boarded. I got up, walked to the door of the next compartment, and, biting my lip, took a deep breath and grabbed the cold handle. It wouldn't budge. The door was locked. I moved to the next one. Locked, too. Every single compartment in the entire car was locked. A wave of inexplicable terror washed over me. Recalling the attendant's words, a disturbing thought popped into my head. Could it be that every compartment in this car had been contaminated? And that all the passengers inside had turned into things like that fat man? My heart suddenly started racing. I gasped. At the same time, I felt the train slowing down. I lifted the curtain in the hallway. The fog was still thick outside, but I could tell the train was decelerating as it pulled into a station. What was happening? I thought this train didn't stop at stations. As if to answer my question, an announcement came over the speakers. Dear passengers, due to unforeseen circumstances, this train will make a temporary stop for maintenance. Please adhere to the regulations and do not leave the train. Just as the announcement ended, a set of hurried footsteps echoed from the other end of the car. I turned my head and saw Rachel walking quickly towards me, her face dark and grim. Rachel? Are you okay? I was both shocked and happy. I looked her up and down. Other than her messy hair and pale face, she seemed fine. Cindy, something's wrong with this train, Rachel said, grabbing my shoulders. She looked at me nervously. We have to get out of here. Now. Get off the train. I was stunned, looking at Rachel in disbelief. But Rachel didn't even bother with her luggage. She just started dragging me toward the train's exit. Rachel, what happened? It's too much to explain in a few words. We'll talk after we get off. But the announcement just said passengers can't get off. That announcement is a lie to trick you. Rachel glared at me, her expression twisted and ferocious. If you stay on this train, you're going to die. I was terrified by how she looked. She was gripping my wrist so tightly it ached, as if she was afraid I'd try to run. Rachel dragged me to the car's exit. Somehow, she actually managed to open the train door. A blast of icy air rushed in. Outside the narrow doorway, the white fog still hadn't lifted. Rachel tried to pull me out of the car. In a panic, a surge of strength coursed through me. I wrenched my hand free from her grasp and stumbled back a few steps into the car. Fine. Stay here and die, then. Rachel threw the words at me, then turned and ran out of the car. Her figure was swallowed by the thick fog in an instant. I stood there, stunned. Outside, it was completely silent. Could it be true, what Rachel said? Were the rules all a lie? The thought had barely formed in my mind when a hysterical scream pierced the air, making me jump. Then, the screaming stopped abruptly. Deep within the white fog, a spray of red blood erupted. A few crimson droplets even splattered onto the metal plate at the car's entrance. I swallowed hard, my Adam's apple bobbing. A conductor in a red uniform emerged from the white mist. His head was lowered, his wide-brimmed cap obscuring his face. He was carrying a round object in his hand, which was still dripping liquid. It was Rachel's head. My heart started to race. The conductor stepped into the car and closed the door behind him. The moment he lifted his head and looked at me, a cold sweat soaked through my clothes. On his face, I could see a dense, exposed network of blood vessels. Where are you going? I heard him ask. The blood on the floor had already formed a small puddle. The fear of death began to eat away at my mind, spreading like the blood on the floor. I didn't dare answer him. I was about to turn and run when I saw that another conductor, this one in a black uniform, was standing at the other end of the connecting passage, blocking my path. This time, I saw his face. His skin looked like it had been burned by fire. It was completely carbonized. His features were gone, melted into an unrecognizable mess. Where are you going? You're not allowed to leave. My teeth were chattering with fear. Thankfully, the restroom wasn't far. Just like before, I quickly dodged into the restroom, planning to use the radio on the wall to call for help. But the radio was dead. There was no response at all. Then, a thought struck me. Usually, when a train stops at a station, the restrooms are locked. But why? As if I already knew, I looked up and saw that the indicator light above the door was red. In that instant, I was completely consumed by terror. I desperately tried to get out of the restroom, but the door wouldn't open. Finally, with one last, forceful shove, I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder as I crashed through the door. But as I looked out at the twisted, warped hallway, I fell into a daze once again. The train car now looked like it had been through a violent impact. The outer shell was dented, and the sleeper compartments on one side of the aisle were crushed together. But the train was still moving. A fierce, cold wind blew in through the shattered windows, making it almost impossible to keep my eyes open. I had no idea what had happened. I just started walking toward the front of the train. After squeezing through the mangled connecting passage, I entered the next car. The smell of something burning hit me, mixed with a nauseatingly sweet, rotten odor. This car looked like it had been in a massive explosion. Everything was scorched black. The beds in the compartments were little more than charred frames. I covered my mouth and nose, trying to fight back the nausea as I prepared to cross the car. But just as I was about to take a step, someone grabbed me from behind, clamping a hand over my mouth and pulling me back. I started to struggle, but then I heard a familiar voice in my ear. "Shoo, don't make a sound." "Rachel?" The name escaped my lips in a shocked whisper. Rachel let go of me. Her expression was tense as she put a finger to her lips, signaling me to be quiet. I remembered what had happened to her after she left the train. "But you're not. The person you saw wasn't me," Rachel said, pausing for a moment. "It was one of the wraiths on this train." "Wraiths?" Rachel pulled a chocolate bar out of her pocket. I remembered it was a snack she'd bought before we got on the train. She tore open the wrapper and tossed it into the ruined car. The moment the chocolate hit the floor, a dozen completely charred creatures shot out from the wreckage. They scrambled over each other, fighting for the chocolate, even tearing at each other to get it. After they finished the chocolate, they all turned their greedy eyes toward us. It seemed, however, that they could only move within that car and couldn't come out into the connecting passage where we were. "Those are the wraiths. They were the original passengers on this train." I stared at Rachel, completely unable to process what she was saying. Rachel put her hands on my shoulders and looked at me with an incredibly serious expression. "Cindy, think carefully. Why did you get on this train? What happened after you boarded? Is this really your first time on this train? What was there to think about?" I remembered it clearly. "My name is Cindy. I'm a sophomore at J University. I was taking this train home for winter break. After I got on." Halfway through the memory, a sharp pain shot through my head. My brain felt like a radio losing its signal, a piercing static buzzing between my ears. Fragmented memories flooded my mind. A crowd of passengers, a deafening crash, panicked people, blood-curdling screams. I remembered. This wasn't my first time on this train. The first time I rode this train, it was hit by a landslide mid-journey. The entire train rolled off a cliff. It was a nightmarish scene. The train cars were twisted like pretzels, buried under rocks and dirt. A fire had started, and there were shattered bodies everywhere. I stared blankly at Rachel. "So, is this the afterlife?" Rachel shook her head and explained, "No, you're not dead. Technically, this is just your subconscious. If you think of the first train as the surface world, then this layer is the deep world. After the disaster, you were so terrified that your subconscious has been trapped here, reliving the experience of getting on this train over and over again. Those rules in the text message were created by your subconscious to protect yourself. Your subconscious has been trying to trick you, making you think that as long as you follow the rules, you'll be safe. And I'm here to get you out. But I accidentally broke one of the rules your subconscious set up, so I got temporarily trapped in this deep world." It took me a moment to digest everything she'd said. I asked her quickly, "So what do I need to do to escape? Do you remember the friendly reminder in the text message?" I thought for a second. "You mean the snack cart?" "Exactly. The wraiths in this deep world have a very strong attachment to things from the surface world. You just need to go to the surface world and buy some snacks, and you can lure them away. But be careful. Don't buy too much. About 10 bags of snacks should be enough. Otherwise, you might make your subconscious suspicious. As long as we can make it to the driver's cab and stop the train, you can go back to the real world. Rachel then led me to the restroom door in the connecting passage. The restroom is the gateway between the surface world and the deep world. When you hide in the restroom in the surface world and the indicator light turns red, you'll be able to come here. Got it? I pressed my lips together and nodded. Rachel gave me one last look and closed the restroom door. When the indicator light above the doorframe turned green again, I stepped out and found that the train car was, indeed, back to normal. The car was quiet. I didn't see anyone. I was wondering where I could find the snack cart when I heard a clank, clank sound behind me. I turned around. An attendant was pushing a snack cart toward me. "Hello, would you like to buy something?" I made a point to check the color of her uniform. It was dark blue. This attendant was a young woman with a short, neat bob and a sweet face. But her skin was a little too white, and her smile was standardized and fixed, like a beautiful, delicate doll. It gave off an unnerving, strange feeling. I didn't dare look at her for too long and quickly averted my gaze. The cart was filled with common snacks and drinks. Then, a rather awkward problem occurred to me. But my phone has no signal. I can't pay. The attendant smiled at me and added, "That's all right. Just show me your ticket, and I'll make a note of it. You can pay when the train arrives at its destination." I pulled out my ticket and handed it to her. She reached out to take it. Her fingers were long and thin, her skin a deathly, bluish white. After she'd written it down, she motioned that I was good to go. Remembering Rachel's instructions, I was careful not to buy too much. "Thank you for your purchase." The attendant put my selected snacks into a plastic bag and handed it to me. As I took the bag, a question popped into my head. After hearing my question, the attendant told me to wait a moment. After checking something, she gave me a definitive answer. I asked her to confirm it several more times, and the answer was always the same. So, I went back to the restroom. When the indicator light turned a solid red, I pushed the door open. Rachel was waiting for me. When she saw the snacks in my hand, her eyes lit up with surprise, and she let out a sigh of relief. "Now, stay close to me." According to Rachel, we had to pass through about 10 cars to get to the driver's cab. The snacks really did have an extraordinary effect on the wraiths. Rachel and I encountered almost no danger. As we passed through the cars and I saw the wraiths, I gradually began to understand that the attendants in other colored uniforms in the surface world were actually wraiths themselves. My subconscious must have created those rules to warn me to stay away from them. There were just a few small things I still didn't understand. I followed closely behind Rachel, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As we ran through the last car, the wraiths, who should have been fighting over the snacks, suddenly changed their target and lunged at Rachel. Caught completely off guard, Rachel was tackled to the ground. She looked at me in disbelief. To avoid arousing Rachel's suspicion, I had intentionally made the last bag of snacks smaller to test the wraith's reaction to her. It was just as I'd suspected. The wraiths in the deep world wouldn't attack me. The person who really needed to be wary of the wraiths was Rachel. That's why she tricked me into going back to the surface world to buy snacks for her. I looked down at her and asked in a low voice, "Who are you, really?" Rachel's face was contorted in pain, but she tried to keep up the act. "I'm your friend, Rachel. Stop lying. I had the attendant check the passenger list for this train. Your name isn't on it." I stared at her face. "You weren't a passenger on this train." Rachel fell silent. I pressed on. "What do you really want from me?" "I told you, I'm trying to help you." Rachel coughed up blood, speaking quickly. "You think breaking this cycle will get you back to the real world? That's all a lie. None of you have ever seen what this world is really like. I'm trying to help you wake up." I had no idea what she was talking about. More and more wraiths piled onto Rachel, tearing at her body. Soon, she stopped moving. Her wide-open eyes were filled with defiance. I walked through the aisle and into the twisted, mangled driver's cab. Ahead of the train was nothing but endless darkness. I sat down in the tattered driver's seat and looked at the lever marked with the emergency brake symbol. My name is Cindy. I was born in a small town in the Northwest. I'm 19 years old. A sophomore at J University. An English Lit major. My whole life has been smooth sailing. I've hardly faced any real trouble. My parents are healthy, my teachers have mostly been kind, and I've never had any major conflicts with friends. The only exception was that accident I was in. I didn't understand what Rachel was saying. I wanted to go back to my normal, real life. That was the most real world I had ever known. So, I looked away from the emergency brake lever. I don't know how much time passed, but a blinding white light flared up ahead, consuming my entire field of vision. After a faint, stinging sensation, a white ceiling came into view. My body felt sore and weak. I could hear muffled voices from outside the door. My parents were crying with joy, saying I had finally woken up. I managed to turn my head and saw a brilliant blue sky and fluffy white clouds outside my bedroom window. I felt like I had woken up from a deep nightmare. I was born again. Year 2825, Mecha Era 5 deep beneath the 5th Neo-Jiangyang city. Inside the energy engine room of a train. Rachel ripped the neural sensor patches from her head and muttered, "Damn it." In front of her stood a massive, cylindrical cultivation pod. A young woman was suspended inside in an orange-yellow liquid. Her eyes were closed, and her body was connected to countless tubes. Some of the tubes supplied a nutrient solution, keeping her alive. The others were connected to the train's power system, turning her into a human battery. Z 1996, awakening failed. Preparing to withdraw. Rachel looked at the woman with deep regret. She had been so close. She could have awakened this woman and gained another comrade for the resistance. But now, the woman had fallen back into the virtual world simulated by the AI. The alarm had been triggered. There was no chance for another neural intrusion. Time was short. Rachel packed her gear, activated her protective shield, blew open the rear door of the train, and jumped out. After a quick roll, she deactivated the shield and followed a winding escape tunnel, avoiding the infrared scanners of patrol drones, until she reached a dilapidated marketplace. This was a slum, located 10,000 feet underground. The streets were filled with raw sewage and devoid of people. Only the glaring neon signs cast a harsh light. A few people with dull, vacant eyes huddled in the corners, living out their days like garbage, completely immersed in virtual worlds. Their brains had atrophied and degenerated to the point where they'd lost even the most basic ability to speak. Rachel ducked into an inconspicuous building, locked the door, and sat at a table. She opened her terminal and uploaded the day's awakening data to the Resistance's private network. About 5 centuries ago, AI technology had reached its peak. Some corporations began using AI to exploit ordinary people for infinite profit, even turning some of them into tools to serve as a new energy source. From the embryonic stage, these people were immersed in nutrient fluid until their bodies failed and they died. During this time, the AI would construct a highly realistic and happy virtual world for them. It was said that this maintained the activity of their neurons, improving the efficiency and stability of the energy supply. Rachel's group, the Resistance, was dedicated to waking these people from their virtual reality. Typically, they would first implant a virus from the outside, causing the person to experience an accident in the virtual world, a car crash, a fire, a drowning, and so on. When the person's consciousness entered a near-death state, Rachel would enter their mind and attempt to break through the AI's defense mechanisms to wake them up completely. She just hadn't expected that, this time, she had underestimated the AI's defenses. The mission to awaken Cindy had ended in failure. It seemed the AI had upgraded its security protocols in response to the Resistance's recent actions. The rules Cindy's subconscious had created were particularly effective. They had almost trapped Rachel herself. Once the data upload was complete, Rachel yawned, feeling a wave of exhaustion. She disconnected from the network, lay down on the bed, and quickly fell asleep. Energy Unit C30210 depleted. Requesting retrieval. Name, Rachel. Virtual occupation, Resistance member. Power supply assignment, Mars, 10th Neo Jiangyang City, Maglev Line 5. Service duration, 201 years, 4 months, 21 days. Average annual energy conversion efficiency, 98.7%.